Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast today. I have one of my favorite people, Tiffany Leader. Now, yes, she was a client of mine, but also she is an inspiration. And I wanted to bring her on because I want her to share her story with you because I think that we don't tell I don't want to say truth. That's not an accurate definition. I think that we need to be more candid when we're showing up online that life is going on while you're in the midst of having your dreams, and she's certainly an example of that, and I'm so excited for where her future is going. I'm so honored to have been a part of it. So Tiffany, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here.
Great. First, what I want you to do is I want you to tell everybody, like, hi, I'm Mary, what do you do?
Yeah. So, hi, everybody. I'm Tiffany Leader. I work with ambitious, high achieving women to eliminate burnout for good so they can truly live a joyful, meaningful, and purpose life. And that's my story as well.
Yes. And how long did it take you to refine being able to say that?
Oh my gosh. I think I still refine it. But I tell you what, I would say probably 4 or 5 months, to be honest, of like for it to roll off as easy as it does. Because
Yeah.
I would trip up and practice and change the words and really figure it out. But yeah, so I'm always changing it. But yeah, probably I'd say 4 to 5 months for me.
Yeah.
And I know that's something we had talked about and something that I've worked through is like, what am I saying matters to me? And I almost had an insecurity of that. But what the process was that I just kept putting it out there. I just kept doing it. Even if I was making mistakes, I was tripping, all that. I just kept putting it out there and now it just rolls off.
Yes. What do you think is the challenging part to that point about, right, that you're putting it out there, right? Because one of the things that definitely working on is like you have a history of, a career woman and,
Mm-hmm.
moving into something else and pivoting and creating a business, et cetera. It's like we have these identities, right? And sometimes we can
Mm-hmm.
get fixated on it. And a lot of time, and historically, because you have all the degrees and everything, we are labeled, right? Clinician, social worker, whatever it is, and when we start going out on our own, and then we have to create our own words, if you will, around what we're doing, how we're helping, that we have nothing to lean on. And so it is that practice. And, what are your thoughts around when, and so for everybody listening and watching, Tiffany and I we worked together, I guess, well, I'm not, I guess I don't even know how long. What, like you took a program and then we worked one on one. So we've known each other, so we can kind of riff here. Here's the goal of this podcast, and those of you watching on the YouTubes, is really asking her questions so that you can see yourself in her story, because she is the perfect example of determination. And so if we're a little scattered, that's just me, right? Because I'm going to riff off of some stuff. But that point about like we get so fixated on labels, i.e., even hi, this is what I do. Like it has to sound perfect and da 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 da. So back to that process, what like practicing and then feeling like this isn't just right. How much of that do you think could have held you back if you would have kept hammering, trying to have just the perfect 7 words strung together?
Oh, I probably wouldn't be have my business right
Exactly my point. That's
now.
what I was getting to.
Yeah, honestly, because when you think you have to have it perfect, then
Yes.
you delay taking action, or at least
Yes.
that's what it was for me. Is that I was like, I'm not ready to put it out there because I don't know everything or I don't do anything. And coming into this new identity as a business person, I always
Mm-hmm.
told myself I would never do that. That was my sister. That was my dad's side of the family. They're the entrepreneur. They have that spirit. I was like, I will never do that. And so for me to actually get to this place where it's like, oh, I am going to do this. How am I going to do this? It challenged a lot of my identity and what I was comfortable saying who I was.
Yes. 100%. And now you're at a place where you know how to create clients, and you know Tiffany's made a lot of money working together, and we had a new offer that she hadn't contemplated, and she's made a ton of money. But it's not just about the money that you've made. It's more important, right? I think that and of course we want to make money and we want to help people. However, I think the biggest lesson has been when you had that moment of realization. I like so remember that, because that was one of the things I would say to you, like, what are your thoughts around this? How are you feeling? The realization, not only just this new identity of a CEO of your own business that you can actually grow it wherever you want, but that moment, oh, I have such chills. That moment when you realized, like, oh my, I've done this, I'm doing this, this is my future. I can literally create what I want. What was that experience for you?
It's almost like I don't have words because it's so much of the emotions of it. Like I go back to that moment when we were talking about it. Um, there's nothing like breaking free. It's almost like we do these self-constructed boxes for
Yes.
ourselves of like, this is who I am. This is what I do. I'm not even going to think outside of this box because this is the lane I know that I'm comfortable with. And that moment was like breaking that box and saying, no, like possibilities are limitless. And I have the ability to create my own financial freedom, financial wealth for myself and my family. And the like the stress that melts from that and the joy that even comes from that, the excitement that comes. It's so funny too, or ironic, I guess, because I used to be so fearful of being an entrepreneur. Like I said earlier,
Yeah.
that like when I got to this moment, it was actually joyous and freeing and gosh, mind blowing, really. I was busting the box I had in my own mind for myself. And it's incredible and empowering to know that like not that I'm in control of things, but like I have the ability to learn, to grow, and create something of my own.
Yes. So what you said about like labeling and your identity and the fact that your family, and I know your sister has a business, right? And that it was the other people.
Yeah, yeah,
And you know what? And I think, you and I know, as working with like tons of people over the years, it's that is a self-imposed identity, right? It's like
yes,
other
yes,
people do that, other people.
yeah,
And women don't take chances a lot of times because it's them, it's those people, and it good or bad, right? Those people. It's like,
right.
one of the things, if people talk negatively about making money, like those rich people, like you're never going to be
Mm-hmm.
rich. I'm going to tell you, ladies, you're never going to be rich, because if you don't want to identify with those rich people who are mean, which is ridiculous, but anyhow, then
Yeah,
you're never going to be that. And so that moment, like that you decided, like, oh, well, I am a business owner and I now am like really like with your family, so to speak, right? It's like, do you have different conversations, or how did they see that? Or, I mean, is there a new conversation? I know you and your sister talk. What is that
yeah,
like for you to have that ability now to have just a different conversation? And you both know as women that you've changed like the language just in your families, right? That you
yeah.
can create whatever you want to.
Yeah, I it has actually brought my sister and I closer
Yeah.
because we have this level of understanding as business owners, and she's been a business owner longer, and I've been in this kind of she's kind of dabbling into the coaching space now, and so I have the knowledge of the coaching space. So we're both kind of just like talking, and we hit the same walls sometimes. So it's like hitting the same identity, having different conversations to really, I feel like I'm getting to know her on a different level.
Yes.
And I feel like for both of us, even though we have been brought up in a family that was like, pursue, work hard, pursue whatever you want, we both have busted. We were talking about this the other day. We still busted limiting beliefs that even our parents didn't even know that they were giving us,
Yes.
doing the best that they can. And so
Yes.
we both feel like we are changing the narrative
Yes.
of what it looks like for us moving forward in life and what our jobs can look like. And I mean, we could go out to like the societal norms for women and
Exactly.
all of that. So
Well, I know that you hear things differently now, right? It's like you
Oh,
have,
yes.
like you're saying, you're having different conversations with your sister, which I know we've talked
Mhm.
about, but also like there's other people in your world, and whether it's
Yes.
former clients or a former job or whatever, or whomever else is in your world, you're hearing their conversation through a
Yes.
new lens. What's that experience like for you, like being like so consciously seeing and hearing it differently?
Yeah. I think when I first started it, I was like, whoa, like how much are we guided by limiting beliefs that either we have taken on unconsciously through our families or through our society? So I'm so much aware of that. And I'm very quick now to be like, oh, but what if? I'm
Yes.
really quick to point out something different. Even with my clients, I had a client the other day. I was like, well, what if it was this way? Just kind of busting that box for her. And she's like, I never thought about it that way. I was like, you could do that? I was like, yeah, you can create your own business if that's what you want to do and create different things. We were just like riffing ideas and stuff like that. And she was like, I didn't even think of that. And so I also see the fear that I used to have in other people
Yes. So talk a
too.
little bit about that, right? Because there's
Yeah.
something safe about like being in a box, right? It's like we
Yeah.
we we think it's predictable. We have our set identity. We can just go along, get along, go along, all of that kind of thing. And what is the like what's the worst case scenario? That's always my bottom line. Like what's the worst case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? So when you see the fear, what are your like observations around women and fears about shifting their identity, creating something new?
Yeah. I think it's all about expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's the root of it. And I think that's what it was for myself. I expected life to look a certain way.
Yeah.
And it was scary to look at it in a different way, even if it was good, just because it was out of my comfort zone and out of even my orbit as far as my thoughts. Like it was out of that. And so it's like to consider something like that, even if it's good, was scary. And I see that in other people. It's like, oh, we have all these unknown things that are happening, or all these like things we can't figure out. Which now I find I embrace that of like, well, what if? And saying instead of saying like, oh, what if this is gonna happen? I'm like, what if it does happen? And get really curious on what could happen, what could it be like? What could life be like if we busted this box in this identity? Like, who would I be? Like, I know who I am. And I think about a lot of what you have said of like, when you build something like this, you become more of yourself. If you're
Yes.
generous, you become more generous. I keep
Exactly.
that in the back of
Yeah.
my head because it's true. It's like we know that, but we don't know it because the fear gets in the way and it clogs our minds of thinking about something new and different. And ultimately, it's amazing what it is.
Right. So can you talk a little bit about what is it like? I want to talk about the grit, right? That you've
Yeah.
had, right? The one is I think that we're also in a society, even though I have my easy button. So for those of you who are listening on the podcast, I'm pushing my easy button. That was easy. And so there's so much that we want to make easy in life. And just like I was like, introduce yourself, and now it's easier, right? It was hard in the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. You know, two things I guess I want to talk about is like the work that comes with busting through the box, right,
Yeah.
and the self identity, and
Mm-hmm.
it is hard work, and
Mm-hmm.
societal not wanting to necessarily embrace hard work or whatever
Mm-hmm.
construct we have around that and want it easy, and the grit and determination to go for your dreams. So when you were working, and while you're building a business, while you're navigating life and husband, family, just taking care of yourself and all of these things, it's like, how did one of the questions that a lot of people ask is like, how do people stay motivated? What's your reason for being motivated in the face of days that are challenging? Or how do you even navigate days that are challenging? How have you made peace with those times that you reached out and you're like, I feel like, I need to take care of myself and my health right now, or the family, and I feel like I'm not doing enough. And one of the things I said to you is that time collapses after a moment. After you learn this and you just start to embody it, like it doesn't even matter that like today you didn't do something, but still, how do you stay motivated? How do you handle taking care of yourself when you're also very driven? What does that look like for you? Or what did it look like too in the beginning?
Yeah, I came to a realization like I had to make a change. And if I didn't make a change, so, I help women with burnout. I went through my own. And this last one, it literally, like, I was tanking mentally, emotionally, physically, tanking in a new way that I've never experienced before. And I knew that I had to make a change. So, one, that was one motivating factor of like, I got to take care of myself, but I also want to find something that I can still help people. I knew it was like there was a glimmer of that there. The burnout was so big. And I was like, I even told people, I was like, maybe I'll just work at a coffee shop and I'll
Yeah.
just, serve coffee. You still interact and talk with people, hear their stories, and they're on their merry way. But I knew inside of me there was still this flame of a passion of still being in a helping profession and what that would look like. And so a couple years ago, but prior to that, I had a colleague that taught me really how to dream and how to dream big. And so, coupled with when I started getting into your world and your things of dreaming and taking that to the next level of dreaming, what do I want life to look like? What do I want it to be like? What do I want it to feel like? And I just kept going back to that when I didn't feel motivated, when I didn't feel like I could that day because of health issues I was navigating or transitions that my husband and I were going through. Um, I would go back to that and what that felt like of being able to have this life full of joy, this life of living outside more than we do inside. How do we navigate that and traveling and all the different things that we do? Um, it was like a stake in the sand that I put, I feel like, at that moment. And I always came back to it when I started to waver or started to get fearful or started to be like, well, maybe I could like think smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I could just go back to what I've done. Or all the clients today were great. So maybe I'll just stay in this
Yeah.
job
I
that
remember
I
that.
was in.
I kind of remember that conversation. You're like,
Yeah.
it wasn't that
Yeah.
bad. I'm like, hello, wake up,
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Right.
how often do you find that people don't have that stake in the sand or they don't make that moment, that change, or they deny it? And right. And this is part of what you do with your clients, right? It's like
Mhm.
the denial of that inner calling of I need to change is what eventually can lead people to burnout, or at
Yeah.
least one of the things, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so what do you think it really takes, for people to make that, like stake their claim? I mean, because I know that you work with women who have burnt out,
Yeah.
while you also want to work with women who think, God, if I keep up on this train, man, I'm going to
Right.
totally burn out. So
Yeah.
what is a catalyst so that it doesn't have to get to a crisis before someone's like, oh shit, I need to make a change? I mean, what's the answer? This is the $5 million question, Tiffany. If you answer
Right.
it correctly,
Right.
you will
Right.
be a billionaire, right? This is truly the life question, right? It's like, what do you think? How can women circumvent a major meltdown? Like you said, I was tanking mentally, emotionally, physically. How can they circumvent that so they don't have to get to that point, or the divorce, or screaming at their kid, or losing their job, or whatever it is, until they choose themselves in their dream?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's pausing to become aware of like what is happening, what's
Mm-hmm.
happening in my world outside of me, what is happening inside of me. Because we all have this innate sense in our soul, and I believe in our spirit of a desire for our lives. We were created with that. And
Mm-hmm.
when we live in a way that does not honor that, that's where the burnout comes ultimately, because we're doing things from other people's expectations. We're doing what society expects, what our spouses expect, what our workplace expects. And then that deep desire, knowing self gets lost.
Mm.
And when we can go back to that place and say, let me just take a moment and decide, like, what is that spot saying? Can I get back to there and say, like, what did she love to do?
Yeah.
When was the last time she was out? When was the last time she like had joy? That's what the word I go to all the time, because that's what I feel like sustains me. And when I teach clients, it sustains them. It's like joy comes from, yes, it's things in our environment, but it hits our soul
Yeah.
and it hits deep in our spirit. And so when we can go back to that place and discover, we can discover what that looks like for you. And every season, it's going to look different. Every season, every woman's going to be in, it's going to be different, but it's all the same as far as like that's going to hit you in that place that's deep inside.
Well, a couple things here. One is every season. I think that that's part of it too, what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Because it's society, it's our spouses, or we just
Yeah.
get trapped, so to speak, and
Yeah.
we don't allow ourselves to recognize seasons in our life and to be in harmony with those flows and those kind of
Yeah.
things. And that's
Yes.
also what burnout is, right? It's just like,
Right.
and one of the things business related, right? There's seasons also in our business. Like I took off a
Yeah.
couple months. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
10 years in, I've built enough where I can do that. And not everybody
Right.
can take that long
Yep.
off. But whatever industry, there's seasons that are busier, and that maybe when you work a little bit more, and then you have your lower time or your downtime where you can travel more, or whatever that looks like, or read more, or whatever.
Yes.
But that's one of the things, right? That the
Mm-hmm.
seasons of business and just life, like
Yeah.
an ill parent, or you have a kid, or you got a dog, or whatever. Like it's
Yeah. And
totally
I've been researching more recently hormone cycles and how
yes,
do you sync your hormone cycle to your business.
yes,
Oh my gosh, it's a game changer. If you have not looked into this, lady, it's like, please, like, look into it because I think we're so not aware. We know because we say, oh, we don't have as much energy and all this stuff when we're on our period. But what about the other time? When can we maximize when we have more energy or when it starts coming down or when it changes? And so when you can look at that, like I have a chart that I look at and I'm like, okay, how can I schedule different things at different times to support myself? So that I don't feel like I have to run the rat race and I don't feel like I have to just keep pressing and keep pushing when honestly I don't feel well or I don't feel like I can. So that alleviates the guilt of
yes.
like pushing and going and pushing and going, being able to take that time to take care of myself and know that like and trust that my business will continue to run regardless of what input that I put into it that day.
Well, and to this point about periods, or because I haven't had a period in a long time, thank you,
Yeah.
Jesus. But still, right?
So
Well,
yeah.
with me now, it's like, discovering about the ADHD and being autistic. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, that's why that happens, or that's why. So whether it's that, or whether it's being in menopause or perimenopause, or you just had a
Right.
kid, or certainly the seasons and cycles, but definitely around
Yeah.
your menstruation cycle. Oh my God, even don't get waxed certain times, girls, and
Yeah.
right, or lift
Right.
weights at certain times. It's like
Right.
sometimes when we have a known, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, it alleviates feeling bad or bashing ourselves, or why can't I
Yes.
push through? But the
Mm-hmm.
pushing through, there's times it's warranted and there's
Yes.
times it's not.
Yes. Yeah. I actually
And
just put out a post on Facebook about that, and I was curious to see how people would answer on it. Because I'm all about, because I'm one that naturally pushes through to a point where it's unhealthy for me. So for me, rest is always an answer. Um, because I'm one that will just knee jerk reaction. I'm going to hit it hard, but I know that's not healthy for me all the time. And I know other people, it could be like rest is their main thing and they actually need to be motivated to go and do a little bit more. And
right.
so I think there's a give and take on the pushing and resting.
Well, I think it comes back to also what you said about there's a deep desire, you have a knowing in your soul and yourself. And I think that we deny that. Right. I call
Yeah.
it delusional denial as one of the 5 blind spots, but it's like
Yeah.
we deny what's going
Mm-hmm.
on around us, but we also deny this inner knowing that we know. I believe, like, and I believe it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I believe we are our highest self. She's available right now, instantly, like right today, this second. And we just deny it. And it's because she's the truth teller. And
Yeah.
sometimes we're afraid of the truth. Like, that's a shitty marriage.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bad job. That get out of this career, fire the client, like you and I were just talking
Yep.
about, before we hit
Yeah.
record,
Yep.
taking these chances. And
Mhm.
what is one of your pieces where, besides again hitting that wall, that crises, where we give ourselves that moment to hear our own desires? What is that like for you now to designate time aside so that you can listen to your own mind?
Yeah, yeah. So like this morning, I I try not to pick up my phone, but I've kind of been in this habit of picking up my phone. So this morning it was a lot cooler where I'm at right now. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna sit outside and have a fire and just take a minute where it's
God
quiet.
dang it. I totally dig that. Oh my God.
Yeah,
That sounds
that's
like the best
awesome.
morning ever, having a bonfire
Yes,
outside. Yes.
yes, yes. And just taking a minute to be like, let me just quiet everything down before the to-do list starts running, before everything happens, to just like, what do I need today?
So
And
look, I know that anyone who's listening, not everyone. There are people that will be listening that will be like, "Oh, well, that's so easy for you, Tiffany."
yeah, yeah,
But I have this and I have that and I have that, and we
yeah,
all have a list. We all
yeah,
have a to-do list. So what
yeah,
one person has on their to-do list is not any more important than someone else's to-do list.
right.
So taking that time though for
Yeah.
yourself, when was the moment that you stopped feeling badly or guilty or whatever shameful, whatever language around that?
Mhm.
When was the moment where you could joyfully give that to yourself, recognizing that it's required now, so to speak?
Yeah, I think it was several months in of me trying it and seeing what it looked like. Like I had done forms of self-care,
Yeah.
but like I realized the self-care I was doing was not what I needed, not that inner place. I wasn't listening. I'm like, oh, I'll go get a massage, or oh, I'll do this. But like during the massage, my brain would be running a mile a minute. What I probably needed
Right.
to do is journal
Right.
or get my thoughts out. And so I think it was a couple, and it's still something I think I deal with today. From I go to that default of like, I gotta keep running, I gotta keep going. But I know now I don't feel guilty at all now. It's taking me a while. I'd say it's taken me several years to really be consistent at it and
Yes.
practicing it. And I'll say this too, with people in different seasons of life, I tell people a great deep breath is it's 8 seconds. So if you can take a good deep breath and have 8 seconds, if that's all you have during your day and during the season of life that you're in, you can take that moment to give your body and your brain some oxygen and release and move on. Because though, if you can take several of those throughout the day, you're good to go. You can be good
Yeah.
to go.
Let me take a deep breath right now. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm like, let me take
Let's all do it together, shall we? Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Yeah,
yeah,
I guess the point with that too is that sometimes it doesn't have to be starting a fire. It doesn't have to be
right.
journaling. It doesn't have to be,
Yes,
the massage. I think part of this
yeah,
too is what is it that would refill your own cup? And how do you even know? Right. Because back to the seasons, because you and I love that concept of seasons. It's
yes.
like there's different seasons that my cup is filled with different stuff, man. And
Exactly.
I,
And it
you know,
changes.
it changes. And I think that we forget that. We
Yes.
or you go through a time where it's just like, this is what I think I need. And then it's not as satisfying, or it's not as rejuvenating.
Yes.
It's not as,
Yes.
and we've been holding on to it for
Yeah.
so long, and we can release and let it go. And I think that that's also hard. This
Yeah.
morning I was thinking about how selfish it is. Like, I like spinning things and turning things and looking at them differently, and I started thinking about women who are so busy that is actually more selfish than sitting and having a fire like you did this morning. Like, because you're not giving your best to anything, most importantly to yourself, because I'm always about yourself first.
Yeah.
But certainly not to your children, your family, your dog, your clients, your business, your, like, and
Yeah.
it's such a selfish act because it's not from the right place then, right?
Right.
What are your thoughts
Yeah.
about
Yeah. That reminds me of an analogy of somebody I talked to. And we know the analogy of like fill your cup first so that you can overflow or whatever. But she was like, the cup is for you.
that? Oh, yeah.
The cup is yours. The cup, you don't, everything that's inside of the cup that doesn't go to anybody except for you. So once you fill your cup, then once it overflows, that's for everybody else. And I was like, oh, that is so good. Because we always talk about like empty your cup, serve, give, do all this stuff. But like the cup is yours. So what that's what I thought when you were talking about. It's like, how often are we sacrificing ourselves for the name of busy or whatever we're trying to accomplish? And you're right, we don't. And I found that for myself. I wasn't giving my best self to anybody or everybody. Maybe they have pieces of it,
Yes,
but I
exactly.
really wasn't showing up in the way that I wanted to.
I think that's it too, right? Then we don't show up and
Mm-hmm.
don't think,
No.
oh, well, it's because I'm so busy.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
blame all these external things when at the end of the day it's
Yes.
all us. It's like
Yes.
there's no blaming. No matter what's
Yeah.
happening, you still have these choices. And I think when we offload our choices, I think that's the moment. And you could have
Yeah.
offloaded your choices. This is one of the reasons I wanted you on here, because you had a job that was paying you, right?
Yep.
You're living how you want to live. And
Yep.
so it's like you could have just been like, my family's the one that are they're entrepreneurs. Like you could have just
Right.
offloaded this.
Yeah.
And then, it could have, and maybe you never would have got back to your real self where you want to live in
Yeah.
joy and listen to that deep, soulful calling.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
I
to
would have.
me the most terrifying thing. Like that's hell on earth to me. That is what scares
Right.
the shit out of me more than anything else. I am willing to feel uncomfortable trying something that might be scary. And it's taken a long time where I can just jump into stuff now.
Yeah.
I'm willing to feel that more than the feeling of I didn't do it. And so with your clients, so talk a little bit about the work that you do with your clients. Like, what do you
Yeah.
walk them through?
Yeah. So one I was thinking about when we were talking about the joy was that she had that we've been walking through for her expectations. That was the one thing that came out when we started working on stuff. She's like, I think I have expectations about life that is not realistic for this season that I'm in, because she has kids. She's working in a corporate job. She's actually been applying for other different jobs. And she's like, I thought I had to have this all day joyous, like head in the clouds feeling. And she's like, I just can't, because I have kids that have things going on in their life. I have this job stuff that's changing. And so, a word that I feel like is kind of buzzing out there right now is finding glimmers of joy. And so, glimmers, they're saying some of the things I've been reading, it's like glimmers are opposite of triggers. They help um, navigate finding joy. And so when even if it's just like for her, one of the things last week she talked about was like baking cookies with her daughter, teaching her daughter how to navigate the oven without burning herself. And she had such a moment of joy that just carried her with that. And laughing with her youngest son because he was having a hard day and it was like, what's going to happen? Are we having a meltdown? And like she did something funny and they just laughed and they just laughed. And so that those were little things she started to point out. It's like it's not big in my expectations, it's not big, but it's these small little things that is bringing her joy and bringing peace back in her life so that she can show up in her job, in her family, in the way that she wants to. So I do a lot of discovering that joy, and then we look at, so the expectation is the mindset piece of like what's there in your mind, what have we attached ourselves to that's not part of that inner knowing self.
Yes, that is so rich. I like what you said about these moments that she's create
Yeah.
or that you help your clients create, because I
Yeah.
think exactly what you said is that, I think that people do have this thing that they think that it's like all or nothing. I either have to
Yes.
be like, oh my God, everything's so great all the time. And
Yes.
if they're not in that vibe all the time, that somehow, that those moments that are happy and joyful really don't matter, or
Right.
they're doing something wrong because they quote, quote, I'm air quoting for you podcast people, air quoting, they should feel like that all the time. And I think that
Yeah.
that has really been a disservice
Yep.
we see it, of course, all over social, right? Everything looks like
Mhm.
peaches and cream and shit like that. And then you realize like you have a real conversation with like somebody and they're like, I'm really actually
Right.
happy. It's like, well,
Yeah.
God, who would have known that? It's just this
Right.
facade. And I think
Yes.
buying into this facade. So how do you help clients navigate that it's okay, that they're not like skipping around, like thrilled out of their mind all the time, that they can have two emotions or even multiple emotions exist, and that's completely normal and fine.
Yes.
That's like, how do you help them navigate having multiple emotions?
Yeah, it's a lot of like we start talking about like what are you feeling? I feel a lot of my clients are cut off from their emotions. They're all up
Yes.
in their head. They can't even they don't even know, or maybe they're some of them I think are scared. I knowing myself, I've been scared of my emotions and what it's actually trying to tell me. So it's saying like you can be okay having the duality of
Yeah.
joy and grief, of laughter, of sadness, of crying, and saying like our society teaches us, oh, you're happy, you're sad,
Yes.
you're up, you're down. It's just the singular thing. But the
Right.
actual human experience is that we have these duality. And when we first start recognizing that, it's confusing. It's like, is this even right? Am I even right to have both of these at the same time? So when we can get to a place of acceptance of that, then you can start to find what is joyful. Because when you
Yeah.
can experience your emotions, whether they're good or bad, we can then experience the joy. When we cut off our emotions, we cut off the joy.
So good right there. Soundbite. Boom. That was perfect, right?
Yeah.
So good. Yeah, because I think about that too, even what I'm experiencing now with River, who's a senior.
Mm-hmm.
She's already been accepted to a school. So her senior year is like cakewalk, which is also
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
And we're going to be selling the big house, and I'm redoing my other house, and
Yeah.
I'm navigating this almost daily crying
Yeah.
of this transition and missing her, while at
Mm-hmm.
the same time excited and joyful out of my freaking
Mm-hmm.
mind to just like
Yeah.
hang out with John all day or like walk around
Yeah.
naked, whatever. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just like there's a new season that's coming and I can value and appreciate it. But that doesn't take away from this
Yes.
beautiful life I've had raising this amazing human in this beautiful environment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I really was able to like feel that the other day. Well, like I'm more consciously allowing those moments and
Yeah.
being grateful for them. And just, I think what you're saying, the way I'm hearing it for myself is when we cut ourselves off from those emotions, or we cut ourselves off from all emotion,
Yes.
and
Yes.
which includes the gratitude and happiness and
Mm-hmm.
joyfulness, because
Yeah.
a lot of times we're having a lot of negative emotions. So, of course, we
Mm-hmm.
want to not feel them, but that leaves no
Right.
room for the joy. And
Yeah.
I think that the big thing, too, is, and knowing you for as long as I have, part of your value system in mine is that we want to, oh, like I could feel
Yeah.
choked. We want to feel it all, even the uncomfortable, because we recognize you can't have yin without yang. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah. And giving ourselves permission to honor
Yeah.
both, and that both is part of our human experience. And
Mm.
it's not something that's wrong. Like, there's nothing wrong with us because we have it. We're actually amazing, complex human beings that get to feel all of this stuff. I think, and redefining, I think it's redefining it all. What we're talking about is redefining those emotions,
Yes.
to be okay and give ourselves permission to feel all of it.
Yes. And I know that you and I are both going through, like, this is part of our mission, right? With our work, right? Is
Yes.
like we do it a
Yeah.
little differently with our clients, but it's still our main
Mhm.
mission because we want that
Yes.
for people. We want
Yes.
people to live their best life, their biggest, boldest life, or their most joyful life, and give themselves
Yes.
permission to actually do that. And yet we have to walk the walk first, like I have, and like you have
Right.
so beautifully. So thank you for coming on today. I want to ask you
Yeah.
how people can get a hold of you. And of course, it will be all in the
Yes.
notes and everything.
Yeah.
But to define for me how you define leading a life uncommon.
Yeah, yeah. So get a hold of me on Instagram. That's kind of my main jam right
That's
now.
yeah,
So
right.
my handle is Tiffany.leader. And I am on Facebook as well. So Tiffany Leader, the Intentional Living Coach, you can find me there as well. How do I how do I define? Is that what you said? How do I define to
Or
lead a
what do you
life?
think of, like, for you, what does it mean to
Yeah.
lead a life uncommon?
Gosh, I'm like, live that life where I can live near water and travel and do all the things that feels that deep desire in my soul and in my husband's soul. So if
Mm.
that means we have to make decisions to sacrifice in certain areas, like we like just practically we have a budget item for travel and it's bigger than maybe most people think. But that's we have decided that's a non-negotiable for us to be in spaces and places where we can adventure and explore and discover. Like I'm getting like choked up talking about it because that's just what fills our soul up. And we're going to decide to make decisions based on that. So that's what I feel like it is leading a life uncommon is leading the life that best suits us. And it doesn't have to make sense to other people because it
Amen.
doesn't. A lot of I have lots of questions from people about it, but they're just I'm just like this is what we're doing and this is what fits us.
Mm, beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on today. It was so good to see
Yes,
you.
well,
I know you
thank
have
you.
so many good things happening. And again, I want to
Yeah,
thank you for just allowing me to be a part of it because I know that you're doing so much good work out in the world. And it just feels so nice to know that, I've had a part of that ripple effect with you transforming the world. So until I see
yeah.
you again, thank you, Tiffany.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. Bye, everybody.